ReleaseWire helps businesses connect with interested journalists and bloggers. Check out the link in the description to save 25% on your first press release.
Admiral, radar shows that we have liberals approaching at 3 o'clock, and libertarians at 9 o'clock, and conservatives at 6 o'clock. They're coming from every angle, every viewpoint. Oh, it's Political Radar with your hosts Rhonda and Elliot.
Hey, all you political junkies, welcome to Political Radar, the best 30 minutes of unscripted and uncensored political talk you will hear all day. We have episode 44, and this is one of these episodes that I've been talking about doing for a while. We've been listening to various people speak, politicians, their mindset, what's going on with politics and whatnot, but we haven't heard from millennials. So we have a few today in the studio, and two of them are our guests. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And we also have a co-host.
Good morning.
That is somewhat new to the studio, but not really. You've been on before.
I've been on a couple times before.
And Elliot's on vacation.
Yes.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about what's going on, the election situation that's happening right now, and it's, what do you think, boys?
Pretty crazy.
Pretty crazy.
I can agree with the crazy part. It's been very interesting, and I'm glad I'm a part of it.
Okay, so let's introduce yourselves and who you are. You're obviously both millennials. One of you is a Trump supporter. The other one is a Hillary supporter.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'm Kyle Cropsey. I'm a small business owner here in Green Bay, and been a Trump supporter since Scott Walker dropped out last summer.
And
I'm Nick Faust. I'm the UWGB chapter chair of College Democrats, and I've been a Hillary Clinton supporter since Bernie conceded in the primaries.
And did you both watch the debate last night?
Yes.
I did.
Who do you think won?
I think Trump won.
I naturally think Hillary Clinton won, but I'm glad it's done. I'm glad no more debates.
Oh, I love the debates. I could watch those every night. They're awesome.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So there's been, discussion that they aren't really talking about issues, that they're really just arguing. What do you think? Do you agree with that statement?
I mean, I feel Trump wants to talk in issues, but then Hillary just bashes him on personal stuff, which, I mean, Trump can go down that road too all the time, and I think Hillary has a lot more on her than Trump does. So if she wants to take the low road, I don't know, Trump will go down that road all day.
So you see this as kind of a competition?
I mean, it shouldn't be.
Okay.
Because Trump has great issues, and that's why I think he's resonated with so many people, different sorts of people, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and I think his message is really residing with a lot of Americans, and I wish that they would actually, I mean, last night they talked more about issues than the last two, I believe, but I still
Do you think he's got his message on issues out there enough?
I mean, I do. If you go to one of his rallies, they're packed, and I watch his rallies on Facebook Live. He's getting 30,000 plus people watching him live on Fox News Live, his page. And then there's probably like 10, 15,000 people at these rallies. So his message is getting out there. And every time I meet someone who saw him in person for the first time, they're like, yeah, I think I'm going to vote Trump after seeing that. It's awesome.
You're feeling him, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so he wants to make America great again.
Yeah.
Can you name two policies that he's laid out there that you think will make America great again?
Well, first is immigration policy. I think the wall is a big must. One, because I've had so many of my friends go down the road of heroin, and it's a very touchy subject for me.
Wait, can you back that up? So the wall, and what did you say? Your friends are
addicted. A lot of them have been addicted to heroin.
Okay.
And I think a wall is going to stop the flow of heroin. He talks about it a lot. He goes to New Hampshire a lot. That's like the biggest problem. New Hampshire, it's a huge problem in Green Bay. Obviously, the wall is not going to stop everything. You need to get more border security. You got to get rid of sanctuary cities. You got to send these people back when they're getting caught, which is not happening. So I think with all that, I think it will help. And if that can help our youth, my kids, my grandkids, not get addicted to heroin, I think anything's better.
So heroin is the reason. It's not necessarily immigration.
I mean, you got to come here legally. I mean, like he says, I have Mexican friends. Like, I don't care that you're here. Like, yeah, it's America. It's awesome. Like, why wouldn't you want to be here? Come legally.
Hey, do you know the price tag of that wall?
I'm sure I think Trump's to like 10, 15 billion.
And who does he want to have pay for that?
Mexico.
Okay, and what do you think about that policy?
Do you
How
think that's
realistic is
realistic?
that? That doesn't seem
I don't think
realistic at all.
It's not. I mean, he's a businessman. He could work something out, but I really think. Well, I mean, I think it would benefit Mexico too. Like they got guns going to Mexico. They got cash for the drugs they're bringing in. They don't want our U.S. dollars. I mean, it's going to help get rid of the cartel. Like if we work together, we could help them. They help us. Their people could work on our people could work on it.
But you know why people are coming from Mexico, right? Because they want to leave their country. Because
Yeah,
they don't have
it's not
opportunity.
good. Yeah.
I mean, that is why they're coming here.
Yeah, I know.
So I don't think ideally, to help them, you have to help their economy if you're going to want them to stay where they are.
I think a wall would help building the economy.
So what do you think Hillary's policy for immigration, how do you feel about what she's saying?
I think while the immigration issue has been largely dominated by the topics of a wall, which I think is kind of asinine in that it's unrealistic, I would like to see a return to us really talking about how we document people in a much more efficient process. And to be honest, I'm not too brushed up on Hillary's immigration policy just because we have been so dominated with talking about a wall or Trump's deportation force. But I would like to see us make it an easier pathway for the millions of undocumented workers who are already in our country and already contributing to the U.S. economy, but they're unable to fully do that or fully pay taxes because they're undocumented or they're in fear of being deported.
That's been one of the main criticisms of her in the debates, is not calling things what they are, referring to illegal immigrants as undocumented workers. Mm-hmm. How do you think that's affected her? Do you think that hurts or helps?
I think largely, like, from a semantics point of view, I think she has the overwhelming support of the Latino community. I don't think calling them illegal aliens is really
because they're people. I mean, I think we forget
beings.
that they're not people. These are people,
right,
with families, but
they're still here illegally.
Right, but what I think the problem is they refer to them as they're some sort of, it's like it's a particular thing. It's not a person.
But it's not just Mexicans. It's all immigrants coming here and staying over on visas. Like, you got to play by the rules. That's why there's laws.
Right, and I think a lot of those people who overstay visas come legally through ports of entry like airports, or they're on work visas, H-1, I don't know the title anymore, what used to be called a green card, and they overstay their visas. So saying that you're going to build a border wall, which in many places, we don't have roads accessing a lot of these areas where you would have to move heavy machinery, construction equipment to build a wall, isn't really going to solve that issue. And when you talk about we need to stimulate the Mexican economy and we need to work with them better on stopping the drug trade, because I agree with you that that's a very important issue, but I think we need to build a bridge with the Mexican government and not necessarily a wall that they would pay for.
And what do you think about, Kyle, the bad hombres? I mean, of all the things to call people, he's on this national stage, right?
Yeah.
That, to me, was mind-blowing that he actually used that term.
I mean, I'm not going to say it was a good term, but that's what you get with Trump. You get just whatever's on the top of his head. He's not scripted. I mean, Hillary Clinton looks like a robot out there. I think I heard her say the same thing every debate. So I'm going to take the bad with the good of Trump. Like,
so you're completely fine with what he's saying about that?
I'm not saying it's completely fine. I'm just not going to let it ruin
Is the appeal
issues.
to you that he calls things like they are?
Yeah, it is what it is.
Okay, now what do you feel about
our generation is soft, and you can tell with everything that's going on in this election.
I think your generation, though, I think you need to remember is that you have men who are, in this world, who are growing up and watching that this is out there, this conversation with women, that he's actually, the way that he talks to women, they're hearing this. My daughter is 11. She's hearing this. She wants to be politically active at 11 years old. She's interested because I am so much. She's listening to what he's saying. I think it's damaging. I think it's, we talk about...
She needs a safe space.
She needs a place to, she needs a place to be able to be engaged and
well, you should
educated.
brush her up on Hillary's husband and all that stuff, because that's
Hillary's husband
not
is
running
not,
for
but no, I'm
president.
sorry. Hillary's husband is not on the ballot. So we have to stick
all
to
the stuff that she did with women and stuff. I mean, that's
well, then we can talk about Melania's porn if we're going to talk about spouses.
That's not porn. That's
anyway.
modeling.
So let's move on. Let's talk about, because there's so many issues that are out there, but with these two, and I think one of the things that they talked about last night was the Second Amendment, which is very heated, obviously topic, but that they differ on that as well. So I will give you the first round on that, Nick.
Yeah, I think what Hillary did last night was she indicated that she supports the Second Amendment. She supports everyone's right to individually own a firearm, but she also supports all of our rights to be safe and be secure, whether it be in public, in an elementary school in Connecticut, or in a movie theater in Colorado, to be safe and to be assured that high capacity firearms aren't going to threaten your life. And I think that calling for reasonable regulation on firearms isn't something that necessarily should go hand in hand with the image of someone coming house to house and stealing your personal firearms.
Which has never happened and never will happen.
It never will happen. It's inconceivable.
What's her description of reasonable restrictions, though?
And I'm not familiar with that, but I know that certainly it's... I don't agree with this idea that you can't talk about sensible policy without being instantly called a firearm grabber, or conjure images of us stealing your firearm.
Well, and let's be real. The Democrats have been in the White House for how many years now? You can go and buy a gun pretty much anywhere you want to. It is so easy. There's so much access to firearms. It's not like it's a hard thing to get a hold of.
Well, you could make the same argument from the opposite side of the coin for the pro-life, pro-choice issue as well, because that is the law of the land as of right now. Mm-hmm. And she's kind of made a case. Actually, they both made a case last night about their positions on that, which...
And I think that's interesting to bring up because, and now we're segueing to abortion because that was discussed last night. And I think... just like with guns, they say, laws, right? We're going to have laws out there. We need to maybe enforce them a little bit stricter so that we have safer communities with these guns out there. Mm-hmm. But abortions are going to happen regardless of whether they're legislated or not. We're just trying to make them safer. And so it's similar. You stop abortion by having laws. No, the abortions are going to continue. Girls are going to be taking care of that, themselves, and they're going to die. And it's happened. It's proven that's what was happening before Roe v. versus Wade was out there. And yes, the laws, they help, they enforce, but it's going to happen regardless. And there are far more, it's a lot harder to get an abortion than it is to get a firearm anywhere in this country. What are your thoughts, Kyle?
On what, guns or abortions?
Either one.
Well,
because they were both discussed last night, and your candidate has an interesting view
I'll start with guns
all of
because
that.
I have my concealed carry. I don't have my gun on me now, but I carry my gun everywhere. I do believe maybe like stronger background checks. We got to make sure we're not getting guns to bad people.
But now that's different than your candidate.
I'm an independent. I never said I agree 100% with everything he says.
Do you think Donald Trump is wrong on that issue?
I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just telling you what I think. Is that wrong that I have a different view than Donald Trump? Is that...
No, not at all. And I think it's great to hear.
Okay, well, let me finish. And I also, Hillary wants to ban AR-15s. I don't agree with that at all. So, I still agree with Trump on that. And when you have strict gun laws, just look at Chicago. That place is a mess. They have the strictest gun laws in the country almost. And people are getting murdered every day. So it's not gun laws that are the issue. It's the people who
guns are purchased in Chicago that are used in Chicago?
They're probably illegal, most of them.
So I always think it's interesting when Republicans use Chicago as an example because you can drive from other areas into Chicago. The guns weren't necessarily purchased in Chicago.
It's New York. It's all the big cities.
But you have to agree, they use Chicago as an example when they talk about gun legislation.
Well, they use Chicago as an example because it's the strictest legislation, and no matter what kind of rules or laws you're going to inflict, the guns are still going to be in Chicago.
Right, but there's no border around there. People can come from Wisconsin and get a gun and go into Chicago and use it in Chicago. I think it's the poverty and the economic situation in Chicago that brings all of that.
Well, I don't think you should be able to do that. Go to a different state, get a gun. So
Well, and clearly they are. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think you should be able to do that either.
And what about that, Nick?
Yeah, I certainly agree that we use Chicago as really an example for kind of arguing against gun reform. But yeah, I think roads and interstates lead out of Cook County, and I think a lot of weapons get trafficked into Chicago despite the laws. And yeah, I think socioeconomics plays a huge part in the South Chicago issues, South and West Chicago.
But if that's the case, is more legislation and more gun control the answer to that?
I don't think that there's just an easy catch-all solution to solving like generational poverty and a lot of the slow economic growth on the south side of Chicago. And I think
so gun legislation wouldn't solve that problem.
Multi-prong legislation. I mean, it's not like gun legislation will solve that issue alone. Maybe gun legislation and furthering economic growth in those communities, or something like Hillary's plan with allowing families making under $125,000 a year to have college available debt-free for them, would do wonders for some of the economically depressed areas where education isn't really an outlook for them. And I see that at the university. I see.
Who pays for that?
Right. So I'm not familiar with the specifics, but what I can tell you is that under her policy, people aren't necessarily getting a free ride. That was a criticism I heard a lot about Senator Sanders, was that this would be a free ride. But she's actually asking people who use this to work 10 hours a week, I believe. And I think that is something that we can look at, because I know several people from my experience at the university who are great students, better students than I am. They may come from the near north side of Milwaukee, and they are no longer enrolled at the university because economically they can't afford to attain the benefits of what a great system we have in the state. And that's got to change. That can't be acceptable. When I hear people criticize the people in Milwaukee and our other urban centers in the state for being lazy or not trying, I like to conjure the images I have of my friends who are no longer enrolled at UWGB, and because of the facts that they can't afford college. And I think that's, as a millennial, that's something that we should be talking about more. We should be talking about college debt reform. And I think, unfortunately, we haven't been able to discuss that.
What is Donald Trump's policy, or what are his views on college debt reform?
I mean, he talks about like we need to do stuff for kids. I think 125 grand's a little too much, because I mean that's a decent amount of money to go to school for free. I'm not going to say what my parents make, but I would have went to school for free then. I mean, and that's ridiculous because I've lived a very well off my entire life. So I mean, I do believe there needs to be something out there for kids, like you said, in inner cities. But Trump wants to help rebuild the inner cities. He wants to bring back the jobs, which will help the growth in the inner cities. So, I mean,
is he going to bring back the jobs that he's shipped overseas? Do you believe that he will?
I mean, if he, like he says, he uses the laws of Hillary Clinton, and if the workers are going over there, I don't see why. I mean, but if he wants to bring the jobs back, I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would.
So his economic policy, tell me why you support that.
I mean, it makes sense. I mean, he's a Bernie supporter. They pretty much have the same idea on trade. So I mean, he says he's going to get some Bernie supporters because of trade. I mean, all our jobs are shipping overseas. I mean, he's touring the United States on a daily basis. He's visiting the people. He's going to these manufacturing companies that are no longer around. I mean, so if you stop the jobs from leaving to these companies, and that's millions of jobs. Or like he says, if they leave, then we're just going to tax them, and then that's money that we'll get rich off it.
What specifically is the draw that he'll create to bring these companies back, to bring these jobs back?
He said he's going to tax them when they leave. So if you're going to tax them, he said that's going to fix a lot of the problem, because they're not going to want to pay those taxes on their goods.
So there's a penalty, is what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, are you aware of his business practices when, how he made his supposed money? I mean, it was really, he just basically filed bankruptcy and sued everyone. Like, those are his business practices.
I mean,
when he's calling himself a businessman, I would highly doubt that you you are a business person, and
I read The Art of the Deal.
Yeah,
and
I can't
he's
imagine.
a genius. He's a genius.
He used the laws that were put in place.
He used the laws. I'm going to do the same thing with my business. I'm going to report a law so I can get more money back in taxes to put towards my business again. That's what you do.
And you stand by that.
I stand by that. I mean, those are the laws.
Bankruptcy laws are put in place to protect business owners.
Yeah.
And so basically that is something that you think using those principles will bring those jobs back.
It's going to help, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so let's move on to another topic, the Supreme Court justices. And I know a lot of people have discussed, this election is important because they want to see, that part of it is the piece that they want to have control over. That their candidate puts forth someone that they agree with, they believe in, will do a good job. What are your thoughts, Nick, on that?
Yeah. So the Supreme Court, obviously, this is probably the most, I was going to say in my lifetime, the most crucial elections for the Supreme Court, but obviously as a millennial, that's not a very long time. But yeah, we see where this is going to be extremely important in that if we want to look at Citizens United or any of these other major decisions that are working their way up to the Supreme Court, it's going to be decided by whoever the next president appoints. I think in a lot of ways, it's kind of funny. I kind of want to see if congressional Republicans get moving at all on Merrick Garland once these poll numbers continue to come out, because I can tell you them not doing their job right now and confirming, or just hearing, not even confirming, hearing the president's nominee is going to look like a much worse decision when Hillary wins and she gets control of who she appoints for the next 4 years.
And that is really this situation right now, is that they're holding that hostage. So it doesn't necessarily matter who's president unless you want to be a dictator and take control of it, right?
Right. So I think they are in many ways making this a very crucial election, because you're right. They're
and they meaning the Republicans.
The Republicans, they're ignoring constitutional precedent to do their job and hear the president's nominee. And a criticism would have been that, Joe Biden has said in the past that during a lame duck session, you don't hear a presidential nominee. But Joe Biden didn't write the Constitution. Republicans claim to really love the Constitution. And so I would think that they should do their constitutional duty and hear Merrick Garland.
The precedent has been, though, in an election year.
Right. If I
There's
believe
an appointment to the Supreme Court.
Was the precedent always all election year, or was it the 3 or 4 months before a president leaves office? Because if I remember correctly, Merrick Garland was nominated by the president before even like the historical precedent of like 3 or 4 months was taking place.
What are your thoughts on that, Kyle, with the Supreme Court justice?
I mean, Trump's can't come out and give him like 20 Supreme Court justices that he would nominate. Obviously, he wants to keep conservative Supreme Court justices, like Justice Scalia.
When do you think he became conservative?
I mean, if you watch videos from a long time ago, he's always, he was...
Because he was pro-life.
He supported Mitt Romney. He supported Reagan. I mean,
But on the issues, he seems to have...
I mean, I've switched
wavered
on issues since I was younger. I mean, I've grown up. I realized stuff. I mean, people...
Historically, he's had some criticisms of candidates on both sides of the aisle. So are there any instances that stick out to you that make you uncomfortable of, say he criticizing Reagan on trade or circumstances like that?
No, because I like George Bush, and he's criticized George Bush. So, I mean, that's why I like Trump. He's just his own guy. He's not really a Republican. He's not really a Democrat. He's kind of like an independent, but he ran as a Republican because independents aren't going to win. So, I mean, he's an American. He loves his country. So
he represents your ideals.
Yeah, a lot.
What about
crazy.
Foreign policy? Because that's obviously a huge topic and something that we're dealing with right now. What's happening in Syria, the threat of ISIS around the world. They seem to differ quite a bit on their policy with that. I'll start with you, Kyle. What do you think about his foreign policy ideas?
I mean, like he says, we need a stronger military. We need to go after ISIS. And
Stronger military, does that mean spending money? More expense?
I mean, we need to
funding it.
It's going to need more money. Like he says, we're giving our military people like not the best tools. Like we need to give them the best tools.
You guys on the left like to spend money.
Yeah, exactly. Throw money at it, fix the problem. But we need a stronger military to go after ISIS. I mean, like he says, they're in 30 countries. We need to team up with other countries. It's not just going to be a one-man show. We need to do vetting for the Syrians coming in. We got to do extreme vetting so we know we're not letting any bad guys in.
So you're not opposed to having Syrian immigrants come into the U.S., but you want to build a wall down in Mexico.
I never said I'm opposed for any immigrants coming in. Just come in legally. I never said I was opposed to any of that.
But you are open to having them come in from Syria.
If they want to come in, if they want to come here, like do good country. I don't want bad people who are going to go down to Orlando and start shooting people up. Like, that's not cool.
You know, the guy was actually born in, I think he was born in Brooklyn.
He's born, but his parents weren't.
Well, and he also was able to buy an assault rifle because we haven't reformed. He shouldn't be able to do that. Right, and we have. But every time we talk about reforming background checks or gun ownership rules, it gets attacked and shut down by the right. And so I would agree that we need to work on common sense regulations for guns, and if the no-fly list should be the no-buy list, and things of that nature.
But what about our due process laws?
Yeah, no.
If you put on a no-fly list, you can be.
And I agree, and I think that the no-fly list needs some reform as well, because a lot of Muslim American groups have talked about how they think that unfairly persecutes them. But if we want to talk about foreign policy and refugees, I think Donald has done damage in vilifying people who are from Syria and who are fleeing conflict in their homeland. And this idea that our vetting processes for refugees aren't up to some kind of standard is kind of laughable, because we have a very strong intelligence community. The people we are...
but the intelligence community isn't who's vetting the refugees.
The UN, and before they come to America, I believe they're vetted by American intelligence agencies or some form of immigration services. But I think a lot of cases, if we actually look at the people we're bringing in mothers, we're bringing in children, people who are wounded in wars, LGBT people who are fleeing persecution in their homeland. So I don't really think that we should be vilifying them. And I also think that Donald is doing some of the work for ISIS and being with his rhetoric in saying like that we should ban all Muslims until we get this thing figured out. I think that's exactly what ISIS wants to hear, because ISIS wants to make this a war of us versus Islam, us versus Muslims all over the world. And I think he's doing work for them when he says that we should ban all Muslims, because that is what ISIS wants to hear. ISIS wants us to make this about religion and about us versus Islam.
Agreed. What about Putin, Kyle, and his relationship? Donald's affection for Putin. I mean, he definitely has it. He gets more airtime. Putin gets more airtime from Donald Trump than almost any media outlet in the U.S.
The media is in Clinton's pocket. Of course he's going to. Are you serious?
Who's in whose pocket?
The media is in Clinton's pocket.
Donald Trump. I just said Donald Trump
I know
gives
what you
Putin
said.
A lot of airtime.
Yeah, because the media wants to make...
So should the media be giving more airtime to Putin? Is that what you're saying?
No, they shouldn't give him any airtime. They're just giving him airtime because Trump says something, or they're just trying to make Trump look bad. It's just
so. Do you believe? And Donald seems to believe that the Russians, we shouldn't have. There's no threat there.
I mean,
and what they're doing in Syria is just fine.
There shouldn't all he says is, wouldn't it be nice to get along with Russia? That's all he says. And
okay, do you believe what the Russians are doing in Syria, though? Don't you believe that's something that's pretty scary what's happening over there?
We got to get rid of ISIS. Like, why can't we work with Russia to get rid of ISIS? Why is that a bad idea?
Like, so how would we do that when they're obliterating people in Syria? How can we work with someone who's doing that?
You're asking the wrong guy. You should ask Trump that, because I don't know.
But what does your candidate feel about that? Because that's a huge problem in the world right now. Have you seen the videos? Have you seen what's happening?
I have not.
You should probably take a look at that, because I think that's something that the world is watching that, and the world watches us and sees what we do when it comes to humanitarian crises like that.
Basing your foreign policy on your feelings that you get from a video, though.
It's not about my feelings on foreign policies, but this is not like a feeling. This is literally happening. This is a fact. This is happening in Syria. And the world watches what we do and how we respond to that is a humanitarian crisis. And there's something seriously horrible happening there. And he is basically giving the props to the country that is responsible for that.
All
that
he said is
dangerous.
he's smarter than Obama and he's smarter than Hillary.
Okay, and he's great. And
I don't
he's
think
great.
he said he's great.
And he's great. And it's great. And I'm great. But I think that is something that he hasn't talked about, and we haven't heard from him. Would you agree, Nick?
Thousands of people are starving in East Aleppo. What the Russians are doing for the Assad regime is all of their air work, and I think that is detrimental. That is part of the problem. I think there are enormous casualties, and I think Hillary, as she's proven to be very well-traveled, is the kind of person who I want negotiating how we establish something like a no-fly zone so we can start to move people in East Aleppo out of the danger zone and get them to refugee camps, because they are starving to death and they are getting bombs dropped on them. And it is one of the humanitarian crises of our times.
I agree. Well, we're out of time, and there's obviously a lot more we could be talking about, but I really appreciate hearing from your point of view. I think it's important. You are the future electorate of this country. I'm glad you're engaged, even though I don't agree with everything that you're saying and how you're feeling, but I'm glad that you're engaged and that you think it's important, and we can assume you're both voting.
Yes.
This might be my last time.
Voting?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't think I'll ever vote for another Republican or Democrat again.
Okay. All right. Well, you're probably not alone in that. I think it's an important time in our life that, people are really considering what they're doing, and they're more conscious more than ever. So
thank you for having us, and thank you for encouraging dialogue. I think this is a healthy democracy. I think this is a discussion that would go to show that. So thank you for having us.
So if we need to get a hold of you, or anyone else needs to get a hold of you, how can people, if they want to ask you questions or engage in more conversation, do you have contact anywhere?
You can add me on Facebook, Kyle Cropsey, business Cropsey Productions LLC. Happy to do work for you. Happy to talk to you.
Yeah, people can find my group on Facebook at UWGB College Democrats, and if they want to talk to me personally, my number is 608-333-6713. We do a lot of great events, and we encourage discussion from both sides of the aisle on campus.
And you guys will keep this tone and this dialogue going outside of the studio here and going forward until the next 20 days are up?
Yes. I might drop dead on November 9th from just exhaustion, and I might never want to watch the news or the TV ever again, but I will
doubt that.
I will run to the finish line.
And then thanks again for being my co-host.
My pleasure, as always.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, Elliot's on holiday. And if anyone wants to get a hold of you, or if there's anything they want to talk to you about with this episode, what can
you
they do?
can find me on Facebook, Adam Funk. You can see me on the Political Radar page. I am a member there. And of course, you can also stop and visit me at my store.
Great. And I'm Rhonda, and you can see me at SitNickHow on Twitter and Facebook. And that brings us to the end of episode 44. And before we go, we want to thank our sponsor, ReleaseWire. It's a powerful media engagement service connecting businesses to interested journalists and bloggers. ReleaseWire is an effective and affordable way to get the word out about your business. As a fan of Political Radar, we have a special offer for you. Distribute. This is my first time doing this, by the way. Elliot always does this. Your first on-demand press release with ReleaseWire and save 25%. Visit releasewire.com/politicalradar or click on the link in the video description to learn more. For more show notes and more about this episode, visit www.politicalradar.com/44. And also, please consider being a part of our Political Radar community on Facebook. There's some interesting discussions happening on there as well. We're out.
Thanks for listening to Political Radar. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. To stay up to date, visit politicalradar.com or connect with us on Facebook or Twitter.